North the grand royal court, the air was thick with the scent of incense, and the walls of the chamber glittered with gold. King Aldrich sat upon his ornate golden throne, surrounded by ministers, soldiers, and nobles. The court was a place of power, wealth, and security. Yet, on this day, a stranger entered, his eyes filled with curiosity and challenge. He bowed before the king, his voice clear and bold. "Your Majesty, they say you are a friend of God, a man of unshakable generosity. But words alone cannot prove such a claim. I asked for a test." The courtiers fell silent, their eyes darting between the man and the king. King Aldrich, known for his wisdom and calm demeanor, looked at the man with curiosity. "Speak your test, and I shall decide if it is worthy," he replied. The man, with a slight smirk, said, "If you are truly as kind and selfless as they say, then give me your throne for 3 days. Step down and let me rule." The court gasped in shock. The ministers exchanged uneasy glances, whispering among themselves. "Your Majesty, this is madness," one minister murmured. No king would abandon his throne for a mere test. What if he seizes power and refuses to return it? Another minister whispered anxiously. But King Aldrich, with the calm strength of a man who had known both power and humility, raised a hand for silence. "If I do not trust in my own generosity, then how can I be called a true friend of God?" His eyes turned to the challenger. "For 3 days you shall rule. I shall step away. May your heart guide you well." With that, the king removed his crown and handed it to the man. The courtiers were left in stunned silence as the man took the throne, his eyes gleaming with ambition. The king, without hesitation, turned and walked out of the court, leaving behind his kingdom. 3 days passed. King Aldrich returned to the royal court, his heart light, expecting the man to step down as agreed. But what awaited him was betrayal. The man, now sitting on the throne, smirked at him. "Your time is up," King Aldrich said, his voice steady. "Step down, as we agreed." But the man's grip on the armrest tightened and he scoffed. "Why should I? This power is intoxicating. You gave me the throne willingly, and now I claim it forever." The courtiers stared in disbelief, waiting for King Aldrich to lash out in rage. But instead, the king nodded quietly, his face unreadable. He turned to the ministers and soldiers, who waited for his orders. "If this throne means so much to you, then rule it well," King Aldrich said, his voice calm but full of sorrow. "I shall take nothing with me but the love of my family." With that, he walked away from his throne, his eyes lingering on his wife, Queen Olara, and their 2 young sons. His queen bowed her head, a silent acceptance in her gaze, and the children clung to her, confused by their father's departure but trusting him completely. King Aldrich and his family became common travelers, far from the palace and the wealth they once knew. They faced cold nights, hunger, and hardship. Yet, through it all, the family remained together, their bond unbroken. One evening, as they rested in a bustling city, a wealthy merchant approached them, his eyes lingering on Queen Olara. "Your wife is a noble lady," he said with a glint in his eyes. "I have a favor to ask. My own wife is ill and needs care. May your wife stay with her for a night." King Aldrich hesitated, sensing something off, but his queen, ever kind-hearted, nodded with compassion. "If it eases someone's suffering, I shall go." The merchant led her away. But once they were alone, his face twisted with greed. He locked her in a room, cackling at his deception. "You villain!" Queen Olara cried, pounding on the door. "My husband will come for me." The merchant smirked. "He gave up a throne. Do you think he will fight for you?" King Aldrich waited for his queen's return, but she never came back. Despair gripped his heart as he set out to find her, taking their 2 sons with him. They journeyed through forests and across rivers, their search consuming them. One fateful day, they reached a raging river. "Wait here," King Aldrich told his elder son. "I will take your brother across." As he waded into the rushing water with his younger son in his arms, A growl echoed from the trees. A wolf leapt from the forest, seizing the elder son in its jaws. "Father, help!" the elder son screamed. In horror, King Aldrich turned, but in that moment, his younger son slipped from his grasp, carried away by the cruel current. "No, no!" the king cried, his voice drowned out by the roar of the river. His kingdom, his wife, his sons. Everything he loved was gone. Act 5. Destiny's Hand. Years passed, and King Aldrich wandered through a new land, broken and lost. One day, he entered a bustling city, a weary traveler with nothing but the memories of his former life. The people gathered around, sensing something about him. A royal falcon was released into the sky, and it circled before landing on him. The crowd gasped, "He is chosen. He is our king." Destiny, it seemed, had not forgotten him. King Aldrich was crowned once more, but this time, he ruled with a heavy heart. His mind was filled with sorrow, haunted by the memories of his lost family. He governed not with joy, but with a sense of duty, carrying the weight of his past. Act 6. The threads rewoven. Unbeknownst to King Aldrich, his sons had survived. The elder son was raised by a hunter, and the younger by a fisherman. One fateful night, the two brothers crossed paths, unaware of their true identities. As they spoke of their pasts, their stories seemed oddly familiar. "I was once a prince," the elder son said. "My father was a just king until we lost everything." The younger son stared at him in shock. "That is my story too." Tears filled their eyes as the truth dawned upon them. They embraced, knowing that they had been separated by fate, but were now reunited in brotherhood. Meanwhile, Queen Alara remained captive in the merchant's home. One day, the merchant boasted of his prized possession before the new king. Suspicion stirred in the king's heart. "Bring this wife of yours to me," he ordered. When Queen Alara was brought before him, their eyes met. Recognition, love, and the flood of lost memories washed over them. She ran to him, sobbing, "My king." With the merchant punished and justice restored, the family, once torn apart, was whole once more. Act 7. Justice restored. News arrived from the old kingdom. The usurper had fallen. The people, tired of living under a false ruler, begged for King Aldrich's return. This time, he did not refuse. He returned to his throne, but he was no longer the same man. The years of suffering had transformed him. He ruled not with power, but with wisdom and compassion, knowing the true cost of a throne. His family, once shattered, stood by his side, their bond stronger than ever. "I have walked the path of suffering," King Aldrich said. "Now, I shall walk the path of justice." His reign was marked by kindness and fairness, and under his rule, the kingdom flourished. And so, the generous king, who had lost everything, found it all again, not just a throne, but the love and loyalty of those who truly mattered. And thus, the story of King Aldrich ended not with the might of a ruler, but with the strength of a family reunited, a kingdom restored, and a soul healed by sacrifice and love.